going to read from 18 to 31. Would anybody like to start?
Srimati Kunti said, "O Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all."
Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized.
You yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of emotional service into the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators, who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How then can we women know you perfectly?
Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudev, pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men of Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows of the senses.
My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are as engraved with lotuses.
O Hrishikesh, master of the senses and lord of the lords, you have released your mother, Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers.
My dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poisoned cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from suffering during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashwatthama.
I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths.
My lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling.
My obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You're self-satisfied, and therefore you're the most gentle and are master of the monists.
My lord, I consider your lordship to be eternal, the supreme controller, without beginning and end, the all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse.
O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial.
Of course it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, although you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering.
My dear Krishna, Yashoda took up a rope to bind me when you committed offense. In your perturbed eyes overflow the tears which wash the mascara from your eyes, and you are from the pure personified
Okay, now we're gonna go to text 23. I'm gonna say it once, and then I want one man and one woman to recite, and then we're gonna move on to the translation. Yatta Hirikesha Kalayena Devaki Kamsena Ruta Tichiram Sucharpita Vimo Chittaham Cha Sahat Maja Vibo Tvayaiva Natena Muhir Vipadganat Thank you. I'm going to read the translation. O Hrishikesha, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother, Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. Purport. Devaki, the mother of Krishna and sister of King Kamsa, was put into prison along with her husband, Vasudeva, because the envious king was afraid of being killed by Devaki's eighth son, Krishna. He killed all the sons of Devaki, who were born before Krishna, but Krishna escaped the danger of child slaughter because he was transferred to the house of Nanda Maharaj, Lord Krishna's foster father. Kunti Devi, along with her children, were also saved from a series of dangers. But Kunti Devi was shown far more favor because Lord Krishna did not save the other children of Devaki, whereas he had saved the children of Kunti Devi. This was done because Devaki's husband, Vasudeva, was living, whereas Kunti Devi was a widow, and there was none to help her except Krishna. The conclusion is that Krishna endows more favor to a devotee who is in greater dangers. Sometimes he puts his pure devotees in such dangers because in that condition of helplessness, the devotee becomes more attached to the Lord. The more the attachment is there for the Lord, the more success is there for the devotee. So I have a story to tell you guys about when I was in danger. So at this point in time in my life, I was working in a restaurant / club, and I went out with my coworkers after work, and I was kind of a devotee, but I wasn't really practicing the regulative principles. So I was drinking with my coworkers, and we're out and about downtown, and we run into this other group of people, And before I get to that part where we ran to the other group of people, I noticed one of my coworkers, she was just really drunk, and I was worried about her because she was really drunk and she was just, out and about. So I sung to her the Neshima Day prayer because I wanted to make sure she got home safely. And after I got done singing it to her, someone had kind of just said it was like just sentimental, didn't really hold any power. So I just said, okay, I didn't really pay that guy any mind. So then we start mingling with this other group of people. And in this other group of people, there's this guy who's like really rowdy. He's climbing trees, falling out the tree, trying to do a backflip out the tree, and like he's like falling really bad and awkwardly, but it's not really like affecting him. It's just, yeah. So then this guy wants to fight me, and I don't know why, but this guy just wanted to fight me, and I didn't want to fight this guy. I was inebriated. I couldn't really defend myself that well, and his friends were like telling me to sit down, just sit down, and I was like, no, this guy's trying to like attack me. So I ended up squaring up with him, but when we were facing each other, he didn't throw any punches. He didn't do anything. He just backed away and put his hands down. And later on that night, the other guy who was kind of just saying that the Neshima Day prayer was like just sentimental, that guy had attacked him. And I was like, days after that happened, I was wondering, why didn't this guy attack me? And I had figured it was because I sung the Neshima Day prayer. I was in danger, and Krishna, oriented that situation in such a way where I wasn't attacked, and I got home safely that night. So I wanted to ask you guys, was there ever any situations where you were in danger and prayed to Krishna and you were safe? And it made you realize that, okay, yeah, Krishna's looking out for me. Stephen?
This didn't happen in real life. It happened in a dream. But in this dream, I was in my hometown, and I was just walking around like down one of the main roads, and then some guy just pulled up and shot me. Like he shot me in the chest. I could feel it. I like looked down and I saw myself bleeding, and I was just thinking like, well, Krishna, this is it. I'm about to die. Let me try to remember you now. And then I was just walking for a couple minutes and chanting and thinking about Krishna, and then I didn't die in the dream.
Nice.
I stayed alive. So
John, and then Gopi.
The first time I ever felt protected by the Lord, it was after I had a pretty intense experience where I had walked across town and I was inebriated, and I had called out for his help, and I received it. And I was about 15, 16. It was the summer before high school. We were doing a lot of drugs that summer. And then after that experience, I remained sober for some amount of time, but also was very, very I attracted to spirituality. So I started chanting more and being attracted to all like these spiritual icons and like the flea market and stuff, like the Buddhas and Marys and Jesuses. And I'm just like, that's what I want. I want these, books, and I want to be surrounded by these things. And I had found this necklace with like it was like a divinity. It had like the Sacred Heart of Mary, and I was wearing it. And I went to the skate park, and there were some kids that wanted to beat me up, and one of them had a baseball bat. And the other kid, he was mad because I had made fun of his little brother in middle school. And they were there. They were going to crush me. And I was with one of my friends sitting next to me. He got so scared he ran and jumped the fence. And I just held on to that necklace, and I was just like, I know the Lord's going to protect me, man. There wasn't a second thought about it. And the kid came up to me. The kid had a bat. He was leaning up against the fence, like swinging around. And the kid who had a problem with me came up to me, and he was like, "Man, remember what you said about my brother?" I was like, "Yeah, I really apologize about that. And I've been wanting to apologize to you for a long time. It was a mistake. I'm sorry it caused so much distress for him and you. And he said, that's all I wanted to hear. And he shook my hand, and that was it. And we were friends after that. Opie?
When I was younger, like in my teenage years, I used to get a lot of what they call sleep paralysis. For anyone that doesn't know, it's like when you're sleeping, you kind of wake up while your body is still asleep. And there's all kinds of things that can happen. You can feel like a real heavy weight on your chest. Sometimes I used to hear like it's like a hurricane is blowing in your ears, all kinds of weird sensations. I'm sure modern thinkers have all kinds of explanations for what this is, but some people would say that it's entities attacking you. And it's very interesting because if you look at throughout all cultures over all times, people who experience sleep paralysis, they also often see a certain entity. And as I say, across all cultures, across all times, those entities are depicted and described in exactly the same way. They have like a certain way they look. So anyway, do with that what you may. But when I became a devotee, or when I got in touch with devotees and started learning about it at the age of around 20, then the next time sleep paralysis would happen, so it's like you're awake, but you can't speak. Sometimes you want to scream, but you can't. So I knew the initiative prayers, and I would just kind of then chant it in my mind because I couldn't utter a word. And in that particular moment, at that night, there was also the gushing wind in my ears and all that weird stuff. And after I mentally sung the prayers, it immediately stopped, and I've never had any sleep paralysis experiences again.
Versika? And then Naratana after Versika.
So I've had the same thing happen. The most unearthly fear that you could imagine was accompanied with it, but the only thing that would get rid of it was the name of God. But the one I wanted to tell you about happened a long, long time ago, where I was walking up some stairs and I got dizzy and I wound up falling backwards on these stairs. And I knew it was a bad fall. I was falling backwards. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going now. And I cried out to Krishna. And I actually got away with only a broken wrist and some cracked ribs and some other things. But I thought for sure this was going to be the end of me. And I was so surprised that I wasn't more injured, or that I didn't actually lose my life, break my neck or something like that. Gopal can tell you he watched the whole thing. Actually, it happened just this summer, not a long time ago, but I'm convinced that the Lord inspired me to call out to him, and I think that it really did save me either from expiring or becoming severely handicapped permanently.
Curses mercy.
My most recent encounter was in Baltimore. I was coming back from campus. I forget what service I was doing. I did something, and I was coming back home on the bus, and it gets pretty dark at night. Like pretty earlier, but I guess it's up north. But it was pretty dark, and so I got on the bus, and my phone died. And then yeah, the bus went in like the opposite direction by this like train station, and it was dark. My phone was dead, and I got off because the bus driver was like, "Yeah, this is the last stop." Okay, and then there was like a ton of just like really weird people around, like just like people on drugs, people not in their senses, and I didn't even know where the outlet was, like to even try charging my phone. I didn't know what else to do, so I just kept chanting my japa because I was also behind my back. And so I just kept chanting and just like pacing around because I couldn't stay in one place because like there was just, you know, some strange people walking really close by, you know, so I had to keep like kind of walking away from them. It was really scary. And then there was this girl who got off a train and she seemed like, I don't know, I was just drawn to her. So I kind of like followed her a little bit. And I was like, yeah, like I'm lost and like, can I like use your phone? And she gave me like a few dollars just in case the bus wasn't gonna take my ticket on my phone. And yeah, and I felt like Krishna sent her like to me just to like make me feel like safe and like more comfortable. And then so yeah, she told me what bus to go on, and then yeah, I got home safe. And I walked back to the Krishna house, and Kartikeya was looking for me. He was driving around looking for me, but he didn't know any details. But yeah, I mean, that felt like because I kept chanting my rounds despite that, Krishna sent me a kind soul, and I got home safe.
Nice. They say that this is the one of the planets in the middle planetary systems, and the reason why this is one of the perfect places for realizing God and Krishna consciousness is because it's not so opulent that we never worry and we never suffer, and it's not so hellish that we suffer so much we can't be sane. It's a perfect condition. These dangers remind us of the position we're in the material world.
All right, so we're going to be reading from text 30. Bear with me, I'm not the best at Sanskrit, but I'll do it one time and then same method, we'll just have one man and one female. Janma karma ka vishabman ajasya kartir atmana tiriyan nursina yadasuha Tadatyana vidam banamam. Translation. Of course, it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work through, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aqueducts. Verily, this is bewildering. Purport. The transcendental pastimes of the Lord are not only bewildering, but also appearingly contradictory. In other words, they are all inconceivable to the limited thinking power of the human being. The Lord is the all prevailing supersoul of all existence, and yet he appears in the form of a boar amongst animals, in the form of a human being as Rama, Krishna, etc., in the form of a rishi like Narayana, and in the form of an aquayak like a fish. Yet it is said that he is unborn and he has nothing to do. In the Shruti mantra, it is said that the Supreme Brahma has nothing to do. No one is equal to or greater than him. He has manifold energies, and everything is performed by him perfectly by automatic knowledge, strength, and activity. All these statements prove without any question that the Lord's activities, forms, and deeds are all inconceivable to our limited thinking power. And because he is inconceivably powerful, everything is possible in him. Therefore, no one can calculate him exactly. Every action of the Lord is bewildering to the common man. He cannot be understood by the Vedic knowledge, but he can be easily understood by the pure devotees because they are intimately related with him. The devotees, therefore, know that although he appears amongst the animals, he is not an animal, nor a man, nor a rishi, nor a fish. He is eternally the Supreme Lord in all circumstances. And so, from this, for me, it just means that devotion deepens when one realizes Krishna's hands in all aspects of life. And so, even when you're going through tough times, being able to see it from what is, Krishna trying to teach me, what's the lesson to be learned. If you're able to, the sooner you're able to actually shift your perspective to that, then the quicker the hurt will heal. Because the more that we think that we're the victim and that we just focus on, woe is me and like, why is this happening to me? And instead shift to, what is Krishna trying to teach me during this phase of my life? And so I wanted to actually relate it to a story of me personally. At the time, I didn't know God as Krishna, but I thought my whole entire life went to an end at one point because I ended up finding myself incarcerated, and literally I could choose one of two paths. I could either adapt and be like everybody else there and conform and and do all the bad stuff that everybody does in there, or else I can see it as a shaping tool. And so that's what I saw it as, and I grew more and more closer to God. And at the time, the only practices that were available in there was Buddhism and Christianity. So I did both, and I really just grew a close knit relationship with God. And I started to really see that this happened to me because I didn't learn my lesson, because I kept on messing with the drugs and messing with the bad people that I used to associate with. And so in there, I made a conscious decision that I'm going to change myself completely. And so even in the actual, rather than just waiting till after the fact, seeing God's hand in it, I seen, Krishna's hand in it while I was in there. I literally seen it as, this is a growing tool for me. Like most people, they would be like, oh my gosh, 3 years, that's a long time. Like, this is miserable. But for me at the time, I was just like, I'm going to use this to become my best version. So when I'm free, I'm able to be more available for my family, more available for myself as well. And so that's how I seen it as God's hand within everything, is because I've completely changed. Anybody who knew me before that experience, when like my family, everybody, they're like, you're a completely different person. And so because I recognize that this is, Krishna, this is God trying to tell me, hey, you need to change your life now, or else, you're going to either end up dead, or else you're going to keep on going through these cycles of just suffering. Because I was truly suffering during the moments, and I didn't turn to God, and instead I turned to drugs and alcohol, and that's what led me to that situation. And so my question for you guys is, when was a time that you actually recognized Krishna's hand, and how did it free you? Jonathan.
Yeah, before we get to the question, I have a question for you, if that's okay. So, it's very inspiring that you're able to use that time of incarceration as basically like an ashram. And that's a tale as old as time, and you did it successfully. There's other people who, while they're incarcerated, are able to use um, that time in their life as a catalyst to connect with the Creator. However, the path is presented them the same way. You're fortunate, to have some Eastern philosophy presented to you. Um, some people take on, Muslim route, and find whatever spiritual literature they can and dive into it. We have Alex, who's in there preaching Krishna consciousness right now. He's got Srimad Bhagavatam, and he's got a class going on in the chapel, very successful, and he's got guys chanting in there because, yeah, he was able to have the association in Krishna House devotees before he went in. So my question to you, though, is after that time, for those that have been successful with connecting and empowering themselves spiritually, and even others, and this could also relate to Krishna House, because we use this time for that as well. When upon leaving, the things, I'm just going to go ahead and say, I know the things that would make it unsuccessful for you to continue to carry that out in your life in the way that you described is association. So the question is, how do you avoid getting back into negative association after that time in order to continue to have a successful spiritual life outside of an institution?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually the main thing that while I was in there, I was explaining to a lot of the prisoners that were in there, because they were literally like, I know I'm going to eventually come right back. They speak it like they just already accept that that's just the life they brought. But me, I realized that I told them, I said, it's the association you have. If you leave and you go right back to that same group of people, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And so for me, the crowd that I used to hang out with, and actually I almost did get back into, not into that exact crowd, because I mean, with the harder drugs and stuff, but I got back into the EDM community again. And I can still be in it and be fine now, like I've done it before. But when I first got out, I realized, I caught myself. I started vaping again, just vape, like it wasn't the hard stuff, but still I started to see myself. I was like, okay, I can see I'm starting to fall back into them patterns. So then I cut off anybody that was like in a positive way. Like I put up boundaries, like if I feel like that they're not going to bring me up, or they're not inspiring, they're not following a God conscious path. I just slowly just said, hey, I'm sorry. I like you as a person, but I just don't really want to hang out anymore, because like we just don't really have anything in common. It's nothing against you. And so this is how I did it. I did that each person. And as I did that, it was like Krishna was getting me, he was shedding all the layers of, like, I still had some stuff that was dealing with coming back from prison. Like I was dealing with mental issues a little bit, PTSD, stuff like that. But I overcame that through just focusing on the mind at first, before Krishna consciousness. I started to study the mind, and I learned that, and then of course, Bob Proctor, he talks about the 5 people you associate with is who you're going to become. And so I was like looking at my association, and I'm like, this is not the kind of person I want to be. So then I said, with all due respect, I just don't want to hang out no more. And so I'm still cool with these guys, like a bunch of them. Like there's rappers, there's like DJs, all these guys. We're still cool and everything, but I just choose not to associate with them, because I just don't find joy or pleasure or anything like that and going out to shows and stuff like that anymore, when we can have a good kirtan like we do on Friday and Saturday, where it's like we have a mosh pit. So it's literally like we're actually at these shows, and it's like, but it's like you feel so much more love. It's like people aren't there to take out their aggression and their anxieties and all that stuff. And people are there to worship God, but to worship Krishna. And so it's like that is such it's ever since I made that decision to start cutting out them people that weren't for me, that created the space, created the room. I was literally by myself. At first I did have a lot of a bad association, but then little by little I created that gap and I pushed everybody away and I was by myself and I was like, what is my purpose? Like, what is my calling? And then I found yoga. And then after yoga, I found, Krishna consciousness. And then that association came because I literally was by myself for a while. And so it went from like having no friends at all, having no association because I realized that they were bad for me, to literally now I came to, first it was Boston and then Krishna House, and here I've met some of the best devotees. And then I realized this association, how much it really does play a big impact more than anything, like is obviously, focusing on Krishna, but our association, the people we associate with truly does shape the person we're going to be, because it's like you kind of take some of their energy. You guys exchange energy the more people that you spend time with. And so upgrading my association has been the number one thing that has kept me on this positive spiritual path. And yeah, so that's just my 2 cents about it. Gopi.
Prabhu, you asked for examples, maybe from our life, of how some suffering led to more Krishna consciousness. I hope it's okay. I don't want to give specific examples, but I just want to share a general experience and realization about this phenomenon of growing through suffering. One of the most important things that suffering can bring us is humility, because arguably the biggest problem we have is our pride. And if you look at many pastimes in the Bhagavatam, there's actually many involving different demigods who kind of act out, and they represent us. That's an example for us of the wrong mentality to have, just like Indra and the Govardhan Puja. He's so proud. And pride is really our enemy. I'm sure many of you have heard or yourself experienced that in the beginning in Krishna consciousness, there's a lot of mercy flowing and you have like a boost. You have a lot of enthusiasm and you grow a lot. Devotees often say that's just Krishna's mercy. He gives you a lot of mercy in the beginning. I kind of have my own theory. I think it's also because when you just join and you come around to a temple or whatever for the first time, you don't have anything to be proud about because you're like the new person. You just want to learn. You see everyone around you as your mentor. And then as soon as some time goes by, we allow things to start going to our head and we become puffed up. And, maybe we've been in the temple for 2 months and then a new person joins and the material mind immediately latches on to that opportunity to now be above someone. Pride just creeps in so many different ways. And this is my point, is that one of the most beneficial things about struggling and suffering is that Krishna can just remind you that you are kind of helpless and not that powerful. So for me, this has been one of the most valuable things about different struggles. It's just to keep me humble and to always remind me that I'm really dependent on Krishna himself, devotees and their association. So yeah, I just wanted to share that idea.
Thank you. Humility definitely plays a big point, because we gotta be humble. Can't let ourselves get too prideful. Being spiritual, because I catch myself sometimes dealing with that too. Whenever I talk to my family or something like that, like I talk to them about Thanksgiving, and then they explain then I sometimes might get a little bit prideful in a sense, and I can film, and then all of a sudden I try to just nip it in the bud back. You know what? It's Krishna's grace that I'm here instead of actually not partaking and just watching sports and eating turkey and stuff, because they were just talking about how amazing it was. And at first my mind jumps to that, like I said, and then I just be humble and just be like, I'm happy that you guys had a good time, and that's my response. It ended up being that, like, instead of being like, oh, well, you could have, not have eaten turkey, or, or, you should be worshiping God or something like that. Cause like, that's what I was thinking in my mind. But then I'm like, be humble, this is my family. So I agree that humility is a big key in our spiritual advancement too. Nate?
I forget their last name, but Sally and probably David the first name. Yeah. And then he's in the crit. Probably didn't come in really and then Sally.
Stephen?
Could I answer your question from earlier about a time where I saw Krishna's hand in my life?
Yes.
So the first time I visited Krishna House was in August of 2021 after spending a little bit of time with the devotees in Orlando when they were trying to start a project similar there earlier that year. I was hanging out with Prihat Mridanga and he was kind of showing me the facilities and giving me a tour of Krishna House. And we were planning on having a kirtan with Madhu Mangala, who's a guitar player. And I also play guitar, so I was very excited to have this exchange with him and to relate with him because we both enjoyed playing that instrument. And when we were passing by the laundry area, I saw sitting on top of the washing machine was the exact pick that I like to use, like when I play guitar, a Dunlop Red Jazz 3. And just in case if you were wondering what it was called. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that this is just sitting there. Like, no one else uses this pick. Madhu said it didn't belong to him. Like, I didn't bring any and leave them. I was like, this is so weird that this just like sitting there for me right before we start the kirtan. So I was like, wow, maybe Krishna is actually God.
And I had another question. So, are there any attachments in our lives that distract us from our spiritual goals? What do you think? What do you think is the main one? What's the main one for you guys? Like, what do you have to catch yourself? I know for me, it's gonna be being on the phone, scrolling. Sometimes I even wrote it down as like put a reminder in my journal and such, and also in my notebook in multiple areas, to limit my scrolling. Because sometimes I'll catch myself. I'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna take a 5-minute break. Next thing you know, I could have been chanting. I could have been, reading. I could have been doing something. But for me, I've noticed that is the one that I got to nip in the bud. So, what do you guys have issues with, and how would you deal with them? Gobi.
Health issues, and then if I eat too much sweet things, it just adds unnecessary pressure to an already struggling body. I blame my mother. I got my sweet tooth from her. How I deal with it is just when I take prasadam, try and do it as intentionally as possible. Think about the fact that it is prasadam, it's mercy from Krishna. Eat slowly, like savor it as prasadam. Don't just like gobble it up mindlessly. That helps.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So yeah, the Kunti's prayer here shows that we got to be dependent on Krishna, and to not try to do it all by ourselves and to instead surrender. And that's one of the key aspects of that I might take away from this is surrender. Shruti Prabhu?
At one point, when he still her sons were young, Krishna sent Akrura to check on her, and he was Akrura. Anyways, Akrura went up to Kunti, and Kunti said, "Oh, does Krishna think of us?" She said, "I'm like a dove amongst these lions or crocodiles or something," because there are people constantly planning to kill her and her sons. And it was just her trying to protect them. So just to your point that yeah, for her entire life, she was always in fear of being murdered and her sons being murdered. And but yeah, so constantly for her, it was constant dependence on Krishna. But yeah, yeah, for me personally, like yeah, there's so many times when I feel like there's always two choices. One is for me to depend on just my strength, or figure things out, or just call out to Krishna. And sometimes I make the right choice, but sometimes I freak out, try to depend on my own abilities. But then I've had lessons where like, no, actually, there's hardly so much we can do. We can try our best, but ultimately we have to depend on Krishna. And, yeah. And many times Krishna does not necessarily reply to our prayers that we want him to respond to, like solve the problem right now. But he does it in such a way that we become more and more dependent on him and realize that actually, yeah, Krishna is the only shelter. One time somebody asked Prabhupada, what is the meaning of humility? And Prabhupada said, humility means not to depend necessarily on our strength or bank balance, but humility means to realize that Krishna is our only shelter.
Yeah.
Thank you for the class. I wanted to share that story happened about devotee protection. It happened in Soviet Union when devotees were just starting to preach and do programs. They were very much persecuted by KGB, and a lot of them were ended up in jails in Siberia. And there was a particular story with this one devotee who wasn't in jail, but there was one guard who took very special pleasure in beating devotees. There is a book called Salted Bread. You can read it and you'll see what devotees had gone through for Prabhupada and for preaching. But this guy was beating this devotee every day. And the words of praying to Vishnudev. And one day he really beaten them up. And the devotee just took it and prayed to Lord Vishnudev. And this guard, the following day he was driving somewhere with his family in a car. And the car just went up the bridge and the whole family just died. And not a single guard ever touched the devotee since then. So Prabhupada, it's protects his devotees.
Nice. Haribo. Garanga. Lakshmi.
When I lived in Chile. I will go to make garlands at the temple after work, and one day I finished very late. I had to take a bus that left me halfway, and I had to wait for another bus near a gas station, and there was no one. And a young man crossed the gas station towards me, who wanted to assault me. When he got to here I was, he said me, you should be here, should it be here, should it be here? Go away, man, tell me. I only had a car and I could take a taxi. He gave me money to go in one. It was Krishna mercy to get me out and transform that situation.
There you go.
It's amazing. Krishna put the people wherever you want. It's amazing. And Prabhupada hear you every time. And right now, no, the same.
Gopi?
I'll share quickly because we're basically out of time, but I thought this is a nice story. I was once distributing books on the city streets in Cape Town, South Africa, and it's broad daylight, but South Africa is pretty dangerous. So I approach everyone. That's my philosophy on book distribution. So I approached this guy, this short brown man, but he's older, and his face, you can just see he's gone through it. He's got face tattoos and everything. And I approach him and ask him if he wants a book. And long story short, he took a book and he said, you really convinced me with this God conscious book. I was just about to rob you and take all your money, but I can see that you're a good man. So thank you for the book, and we had a nice exchange.
Dang. Any more points? Go maybe two more. Legit.
I just wanted to shout out Journey Home by Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Is full of these amazing stories where Maharaj was in really big danger and his life was threatened, and he just called out to the Lord, and the Lord saved him. So it's really amazing to see. It really builds your faith. It's like secondhand faith, you know. And then obviously the story of Draupadi when she was getting disrobed in the assembly of Kurus, and then she just called out to Krishna and he saved her. But the only time that she actually got saved was when she completely surrendered. So those are my 2 points there. Everyone should read Journey Home. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Journey Home is really great. There's so many stories of him being rescued by Krishna. He prays to Krishna multiple times and he gets saved. It's just random. That book's phenomenal. Any other points? Nate.
And I realized that they're almost hard to articulate because they're so like a lot more subtle. They're like things like I like to say that I'm smart or these more like subtle attachments that are always so like, oh yeah, like that's not like saying like I spend too much time watching TV. It's like no, like I actually like it. I relish it too much when someone thinks that. Pure devotee. And, yeah, so more subtle things.
That's good. Shruti?
So I was a student when study abroad so much. I used to go in our city. There was just a small group of devotees, and one particular night, I was standing at the bus stop. So I was there myself, and this one guy shows up. He starts talking to me, and he said he lived next to a village. So there used to be food. I asked, "Oh, you lose?" He said, "No, I lost 18 food." Okay, thanks for telling me that. And then he asked me, "What are you?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't say hard. So I said, "So you worship God, or do you worship trees?" So I said, "No, I worship God." He said specifically God. Okay. And I was really scared. Like, I don't know, it's dark. And so we got on the same bus, and then we talked a bit. It's funny because as we talked, we started telling about and it was like a regular time. And then I used to get my contact with people on this. So I thought I was in my contact. So I gave him that card. So I gave him the card, and he looked at it and he was like, I thought you worship God, who's this? I was like, oh no. So I was like, well, you sincerely are the Christian. I started to honestly answer the question. I said, oh, there's three Christians that absolutely very personal. He decided to try to get. I said, well, there's three Christianity God. And he turns the card and he looks at the mama and he reads it out loud in the entire process. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And I was just reflecting that, I was really scared actually because Israel is such a crazy place. And then we looked at the card again, and he started asking questions, and I started having fun with it. So he asked, he said, oh no, I said, you don't want to know how to say it, because he asked for the mama cover language. And I told him, you don't know how to say thank you. So he said, how? I said, you say Gorangas. And the bus he goes, Gorangas. And so then he asked me, oh, if I want to go to my friends and want to say how, I want to fight. He said, Nityananda. He goes, Nityananda. And then he said, if I want to go to Goa, I just want to say I love you or something. How do I say it? He said, Caesar. He said, Radha Rani. He goes, Radha Rani. And then he kind of lighted it up, and then he was asking more questions about the class. And then one bus stop downtown, this girl came. He knew it. And then all of a sudden he pulled out that card and he said, look, that's Krishna. Isn't it beautiful? I was like, what's happening here? This guy was like getting on my case if I worship God like 15 minutes ago. And here he is preaching. And I was like, oh yeah, I started explaining this. And then he interrupted me and he started explaining the Mama himself. And then he started telling her about it. And then when she read she saw the Mama, she started reading it out loud. And it was funny because she came, she was coming back from downtown. But then, when she read the Mama, her eyes looked like life came back to her. You never know in any place. I was thinking, it started off being there because Krishna was there. That was one day.
It's a nice story. Arrivo.
I want to just quickly tell this story about it. Really, it's a true story. There was one book distributor, and he had a hard time doing books in one day. And he noticed that people specifically were having a hard time when they would see it's about Krishna or it's about some Vedic. Sometimes we approach people, starts out with yoga, it's Ayurveda. And this one lady approached him, and she started looking through the book, and she looked for some time, and then she looked him straight in the eyes and she asked, is this book about Krishna? And he was like, he said his heart dropped. He's like, well, if I tell her the truth, she's not going to take the book. And he said, you know what? I'm just going to say it. He said, yes, from beginning to the end. And she was so happy. She's like, I was looking for a book about Krishna. So you should just take shelter and Krishna will take care of the rest.
Yeah.